Atalanta, and this is Everyday Witchcraft. Here on Everyday Witchcraft, we explore everything from witchcraft to the occult to the paranormal and the spiritual. Every week we have special guests that have expertise in the subject matter at hand. Welcome to another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. Tonight's special guest is Sarah Heartsong. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Religion and Global Studies and a minor in anthropology. She also has a master's in the arts of communication, focusing on taboo identities. She is an author, and tonight we'll be discussing her new book, Beltane Blessings, which is part of a series dedicated primarily to preteens for the Will of the Year. No further ado, let's welcome Sarah.
Okay.
We're here on another episode of Everyday Witchcraft, and tonight's special guest is Irreverent Sarah Heartsong. And how are you doing today, Sarah?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and
I'm
to
so
share with you
excited.
today.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. So can we start? Just tell a little bit about yourself and your background.
Absolutely. So I've been on this particular path, which I call as nature-centered or nature-centric spiritual path since the 90s. The beginning of the 90s is when I had my epiphany, my come to the goddess moment, and realized I'm a witch. Then I graduated from Pacific Lutheran University in 1994 with a degree in religion, focusing though on lots of different religions and philosophies and thoughts and so forth and so on. So I've been walking this path for a long time, and I call myself a sovereign high priestess of the Order of Heartsong, which is me, just a facetious way to say like I'm a high priestess unto myself.
I love that. Well, talk about your education a little bit more. When I read in your bio, you've got degrees and experience, and you've written papers that you mentioned a few minutes ago that you're going to turn into a book.
Absolutely, absolutely. So since the beginning of the 90s, I've been working on books in my head as I walked through this world, and my guides have told me I was to learn experientially as well as mentally, like intellectually, that those things were not one better than the other. We have to have both. And that I was supposed to learn from the land upon which I walk, as well as my biological heritage and the blood memories that come as well. So it's about a path about balance and harmony and finding a spectrum of views. And so I've been working on that since the early 90s. And I got my my graduate degree in 2004 from New Mexico State University. And it was in communication studies, and I focused on identity, communication of identity, especially of taboo identities. And my master's degree thesis was a study of some witches at a gathering here in Washington State, and about disclosing their identity as a witch. And so it's called Coming Out of the Broom Closet, the communicative act of self-disclosure as a witch. And so that was in the early 2000s. And here in the next couple of years, at some point, I'm going to be revisiting that topic because things since then to now have changed quite a bit. And I really look a lot at politeness theory and how we enact politeness. And politeness is really challenging right now. How do you perform the act of being polite in multiple scenarios and across different scenes with different participants who all come with different cultural views about what polite is?
exactly. What do you think the biggest challenge was back then? Because it has changed completely from 2004.
Now, mind you, be aware every part of the country has a little different take on this because the acceptance and openness is very different from, say, Seattle to the deep south, to New Mexico in the north in Santa Fe versus even the south in Las Cruces. In one state, there's differences. So, first of all, overall, I think there's one more recognition and honoring of it as nature-centered religions, plural, as as something that is to be honored and to be held as valid. Even it's not something that is brushed necessarily under the rug as much. So I feel like there's a lot more understanding widely now. Um, so one would hope it would make it easier to come out of the room closet now. However, I'm not going to necessarily make that opinion because I want to study it, right? As an ethnographer is how I did it. It was a qualitative research study, and I would do a similar kind of study, but bring it forward into this time with the same people in the same area. So it was in Washington State. So it's understanding that it's a lot easier, I believe, in this part of the nation to come out than in other places.
Yeah, it is very difficult. I recently have made a big move. I'm still in the South, and I feel like it's my responsibility to educate people on
Hmm.
witchcraft because obviously there's so many different types, first of all, but there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I make it a point to speak up when people ask me, and I don't walk around. Well, I kind of do, I guess. My car has the stickers on the bumper stickers and stuff, but I don't make it a point just to walk around and say, "Hey, I'm a witch, I'm a witch." But if anybody asks me, I'll sit down and have a conversation. I just did a couple weeks ago, about 5.5 hours with a neighbor, and and we both learned things. So,
Absolutely.
I think that's the most important thing is to kind of get the misconceptions, out of the way. And,
I I agree. I agree. And a lot of people, they don't realize how much we assume about other people. So putting that on hold and really getting to the basic and step by step, where are we still common? Where are the commonalities, right? And to focus on
exactly.
those, we're much more similar than we are apart,
Mhm.
really, when it comes
Yeah.
down to it.
Yeah. And I noticed that, there's a lot of fear with the public concerning witchcraft, but it's because of Hollywood and just the different, like I said, the different misconceptions and stuff. But there's a lot of fear with Christianity too and other faiths, and it's important that we get together and we communicate and,
So
and like you said, find the common ground. So,
I want to add to this, though. It is not just from the media, it is not just from Hollywood. And
mhm,
this is where the conversation many times stops. And I want to stop that. It started with the Catholic Church deciding it was the only one religion that anybody could be, and decided that they were going to enforce that with violence and upon threat of death. That's where this started.
true. That's true. I didn't even think back that far, but that's absolutely the truth. And
And
it's
we're
just
still
roller
dealing with
coaster.
it now. Look
Hmm.
at our abortion stuff. Where did
Yeah.
that come from? This witch burning times, I would say, as somebody who has looked at the history of things in society, we need to remember where we
Where
came
everything
from. Are
all stems from.
changing,
Hmm.
and now I'm going to poke you. You need to watch your news because these witch
I know.
burning times can happen again. And
I
if
know.
you don't vote and if you don't go out there and be vocal, people are not going to think that it matters.
Yeah.
And
I
it
don't watch it
really
on a
matters.
regular basis. And there's reasons why I don't do that right now. I'm on a special little thing. And so I stay away. If it's something important, I have somebody that reports to me and says, you need to watch
Okay.
this. and I will.
Excellent.
Yeah, but I
Good.
just right now I'm staying away from a lot of that kind of stuff. So listening to certain things right now because I'm on this little journey. So for a
Mhm.
bit, I'm just kind of, but I do watch it whenever it's major. I just don't watch it on a nightly basis. Stay away
There
from
is
it.
such thing as consumption, too much consumption. So
Right.
I can applaud you if you're working on finding balanced consumption, except
Hmm.
that I've heard so many people that are just like, we're going to go to the extreme. We're going to cut it
Yeah.
completely off. And I'm like, but how do you know if they're going to take away your rights? And
Right.
then you're
Right.
going to wake up and you can no longer worship in your backyard?
Hmm.
You know, you don't think it can happen, and it
It can
can.
happen. It can
And we're
absolutely
very
happen.
close to fascism right now.
Yeah, it can absolutely happen. That's the key is to find that balance. It seems like either people are this way or they're this way. And to me, I can't comprehend that. I'm like, why? That's why, like right now, in studying, whenever I come up with a concept, I go through all the different things and see what is the common ground. Like, I study the science part of it, the religion part of it, the metaphysical part of the quantum. I go through all the different things and see, okay, well, where's the common ground? Because why do you have to be right? Why do you have to be right? Why can't everybody kind of be right and find that balance? And that's a big thing that I'm on right now is researching stuff. I've been on that for a couple of
Wonderful.
years now. So yeah,
Beautiful, beautiful.
yeah.
So this
Yes,
Beltane
absolutely.
Blessings book, which is the first book in my series of the Wheel of the Year series for preteens.
Hmm.
There's actually quite a bit of places for you to go to research.
I
So
saw that.
I have a bunch of references here. I even have a whole section for parents with
Hmm.
resources for them to go look for education that will help them educate their kids around sexy things.
I saw that. I read your book, and it was really good. I wasn't that I was shocked, but I was like, wow, somebody is actually stepping up and making a difference in the preteen's life, and being honest. I loved both stories. I thought they were both great. But yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Talk about the story a little bit. Don't give too much away because we want people to dive
I
into it.
won't. I won't. I'll just tell you that I have two stories that I'm telling or retell. One is a retelling of the wisdom of Rhiannon, and that is from the Mabinogi, also known as Mabinogion. So an ancient story of Rhiannon, and she comes from Welsh and Celtic sources. And then the other one though, when I realized that this Wheel of the Year series I've been working on for all these years, like literally all these years, as I've done the work, as I walk through different traditions of nature-centered people, as I've walked through interfaith circles and been in all kinds of different ways and traditional spaces, I found myself compelled to this particular Beltane ceremony in New Mexico that has now been enacted for over 40 years.
Oh.
And it only missed a time during the pandemic. And now I've hived off of that and have my own little Beltane event, and we're having it here this first weekend in May coming up. And it will be a recurring event. And eventually I want to hive off of this and make it a bigger event. But for now, I'm doing this little event, and this little book has these two stories. The first story, though, when I realized this is my focus needs to be on the preteens because I'm a mom. I used to be a foster mother, and I'm a stepmom, and I'm a sex educator. And I've been trained to educate people around sexy things and identity, all the way from kindergarten up to elderly, the whole range. I can talk to you at whatever level you come in at, including with intellectual diversities as well, because I have a lot of background working with people who have diverse needs.
I
Taking
love
all
that.
that experience, I realized that I needed to create a story that kids nowadays in this preteen age, they're dealing with pubescence, and it's really challenging because we're in a new place with identity right now in our culture where more identities are being explored and appreciated and honored than Western society ever has.
Which
Not
can be
saying any
confusing.
society, because
Right.
indigenous cultures have had many different forms of religion, of gender expression,
I didn't know
much
that.
more than just two, much more than just
I
two.
didn't know that. I did not know. I'm sure most people don't know that. And this is like, this is a really it can be a touchy subject. It's a really
Mhm.
interesting subject because I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. It wasn't until the last couple of years that I really started learning a little bit about the different identities. And over the last year, have I and I'm be honest, I'm still very ignorant when it comes to it, but I know a little bit about the basics. When I read your book, it it reminded me of a conversation I had with a friend months ago where she was explaining all the different identities, and I was just sitting there like this, you know, because I had no idea of all the information. I had heard the different things, but I think it's wonderful that you're bringing that out and you're explaining it to especially preteens. It's hard to be a preteen anyway from years ago, and now I can imagine, how confusing it is. And people my age, I'm almost 55. So in my head, I'm set with, okay, this is what we have. No, it's not what we have. We have so much more,
So
so
I am not necessarily even targeting that in a biological age,
mhm.
because each one of us has a preteen inside of us that may or may not have gotten what we needed when we were being educated at that age around sexuality, around relationships, around gender, around identity. And I'm also speaking to that inside of each one of us that has come through that age. So I really do see this as a teaching tool for people who are older to also read and become more aware of what you're going to actually find out there, especially if you go to a pagan event, because we have a lot of divergence coming and diversity, everywhere around identity, around genders, around sexuality and relationships. And I wanted to explore that. And here's a narrative I'm really tired of hearing, this serial monogamy narrative, especially with the kids and with media around young people. There's this theme of, you're going to be in a relationship. You're going to see another person. You're going to be interested in that person. You have to break up 100% with that person, never ever be their friends, or maybe your friends, but it's going to be awkward. And then you can go to the next person until that happens and you break up and you go to the next person and the next person. And it's just drama after drama after drama. And it doesn't have to be like that, people. Relationship with someone, okay, that's normal. Everybody are in relationships with each other. What kind of relationship are you in? And
And
what
be
are the
clear about it.
boundaries?
And
What
be
are the
clear about it. Yeah.
framework
Hmm.
around the relationship?
Right.
So are you in, there has to be clear understandings, and that happens through communication. But how can you have communication if you don't even have words to describe the concepts that can open up to more possibilities and diversity?
Right. And I remember me as a very young child. I mean, I was way before preteen and having feelings um toward, same sex, but yet I was more drawn to the opposite sex. But still, I had feelings with certain people of the same sex. Nobody, I thought I was strange, and I thought something was wrong with me. I had nobody to talk to.
But I mean,
And then it's so much. It's so much. And I was gonna glance at your book, and then I started reading it. I was like, oh, no, 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 we're reading this. So I did,
older.
and you're right. It's, granted, it's designed for preteens, but that preteen and everybody, I totally agree with that. Once I got into it, I said, oh, let's read some more. And I love the fact that you have so many references in it. You have, definitions in it. I mean, it's just very clear, and it keeps your attention too. It keeps your attention all the way through it. So I love it.
Yeah, so throughout the like modern day young person, it's a trinity, really. It's friends who end up interested in the same person, and then what do? Just leave it at that. Yet these are kids that are going to this event and have to grapple with these concepts. and with the parents who were also bringing their kids to this event, and how do they grapple with the concepts?
Hmm.
And then how does the whole community work together to create this sacred play that honors sexuality as blessed and beautiful, and understands that all acts of love and pleasure are my rituals?
Hmm. And
How do we get to
with
that?
respect. And I love also the fact that you stressed consent. And what is consent? Because
That's
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 a
the way
confusion.
towards healing. Is
Right.
that is a key. One of those keys that Hecate carries, one of those keys is consent. And
Absolutely.
I mean radical consent. You might think you have consent, but I want to take it one step further. Let's really talk it through,
Mhm.
and
Absolutely.
let's try to not
You know
assume.
that you managed to touch
Thank
on
you.
every little aspect of of what they're going through, and the fact that, like you said, they were friends, and then of course they meet this new person, and and it's okay, and they're talking about lifelong friendships. I think that that's also real important too, so I really
Yeah.
enjoy. Yeah.
So I was guided to this festival I mentioned before that has been
Mhm.
going on for over 40 years now. So Beltane Southwest is one event I've been part of, been watching, uh, them grow. I've been, planting my little seeds of things throughout the years that I've been encouraging them as a priestess walking through will do. And amongst that, I watched consent grow. And I watched this beautiful thing happen because we want to create a safe space. And we're challenged because there's so much that baggage that people bring with them. They don't even know because it's on their backs and they are not seeing it. And how do we get through that to a place where we can have a safe space and where consent is the key and the default? And they created a beautiful safe space policy that is a community document. And I've hived off of that event and then adapted it for my event and put it in the book so that it can be an example of what other people can do to create safe space policies. Helps to tell people what the expectations are.
And be clear. That's the most important thing. Be clear, you know.
And not assume that they know, because we have so many different people coming together to try to do this thing, and everybody brings their own baggage and their own
Mhm.
cultural expectations around how to be polite, how to do this thing, right? So ex get put it down there so that if there's a question, you go back to it and say, okay, well, what does it say?
What is it? That's right. What about, okay, let's talk about identities again. Can you kind of explore that a little bit? Because I know that there are, like me, there are a lot of people, maybe we've heard, and gotten some of the information, but can you kind of explore that a little bit? Because I think that's wonderful too, that you put that in there. You even put examples of what you can say, and fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm. So part of the work that I do as a sex educator is also a priestess of Aphrodite. And Venus Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty and pleasure, requires us to really look within to know what our pleasures are, to know what it is that is appropriate for ourselves, and to know what is not appropriate. And now understanding that will change moment to moment as you go through whatever situations you're in with whatever participants are in that scene being enacted. So with that understanding, there are also identities that we carry that don't really change that much, right? So that includes agreements that we have with our beloveds in our relationships, in what we are comfortable with, and how we identify deeply with ourselves. So first of all, sex is biological, gender is culturally enacted. Okay. Sex biological, though, is also complicated because that can come across in multiple ways. It is not just binary. Science is very clear. We have multiple ways of nature expressing sex through the creation of our genitalia, which is different and will be different for everybody and can be both intersex and have blended. So there are multiple sexes even. So now gender. Gender is a culturally enacted thing, and different cultures have different expressions of gender and what is gender to be performed by whatever gender you might be. So with that, it's a very big topic, right? So I try to make something that's approachable, that's you can grapple with and just like put together a little statement that you could bring out of your pocket and bring forward if you're in a dating kind of scenario. So if we're in a dating scene, this is how you would describe yourself. Because you're going to just potentially describe yourself differently if you're in the supermarket than you are in a dating scenario, right? Than you are in a family dinner. Because
True.
you're bringing forward different parts of your personality and your person. So in a dating scenario, you want to describe your relationship boundaries, how you see yourself as far as openness around potential new relationships, and who you're attracted to. And I mean, that in itself, who you're attracted to, is a huge topic.
Right.
All different kinds of identities that you can claim,
Yeah,
all the
and
way from
also
hedonistic.
the whole
Yep.
sexuality part too. What role do you want to play sexually in a relationship? I found that pretty interesting. The conversation I had a few months ago with my friend, she was explaining all that to me as well. The fact that do you even want to have a sexual relationship, or is it just, I guess I wouldn't be called, I guess it's platonic. And what type, and I don't remember the words, and I apologize for that, but
It's
there was,
okay.
one that was, you would just want to be romantically involved but not sexually involved. So
Mhm.
there's all those different ones too, and that you need to be clear when you are in a dating situation, and you need to be clear if you're out for dating as well, because maybe you're not.
And then there's the kids nowadays who say that they don't date, they just hang out. So,
So many
so,
words.
uh, and they can change from, so that's what one needs to really remember too, is that this is fluid. This is
Mhm.
not necessarily something that is contained. Through time, it will change. Through your ages, your biology changes, your sexuality changes as your biology, as your hormones change. So this kind of thinking around, we're only going to be with somebody who is our opposite sex, and we're going to do this forever until we break up, and then only one other person, and then until we break up, and or we are really looking for a true soulmate. It's going to be this one person is going to fulfill everything about me. Mm,
Forever and ever.
usually that never happens.
Right. Where did that start? Do you know? I mean, where did the whole monogamy thing?
You
Because
know,
I really don't know.
we asked that question again.
Monogamy, like where did that concept even come from? When did that?
Ownership of women in pastoral, when we went into agricultural societies and
Mhm.
pastoral societies, men needed to know their child was their biological child, and then they had to own the woman then. So that's where most people will say that came in, but it's going to be enacted differently in each culture even, and through time again, everything changes through time. So it's
Wow.
challenging.
It is challenging. What
Rhiannon
about?
is a story. This is a story that really it it breaks my heart. It
Mhm.
really does. It's a really deep story, and I think it's really meaningful right now, especially um talking about women and sister wounds, and it's a coming of age story in many ways. Now, this is only half of the part of Rhiannon's actual story. I'll get into more of her story later in other books, and I'll bring out the rest of the story because the Mabinogi has more to that story when she gets older. She doesn't just have one husband. She has multiple husbands.
That's right, because her son ended up granting her a second husband, correct? After her husband died.
Well, it was
Okay.
his job to find her a husband.
Mhm.
She gets to, it was Celtic um culture that the women, they could not be given away. They were not owned. They chose. So
Mhm.
that was a real important thing to remember, is that in the ancient worlds, women still had choices. And some cultures more than others. In our Celtic um, North European ways, the women generally were able to say yes or no, and especially in the Welsh, which is the story that we have is mostly based upon the Welsh retelling. However, for the longest time, it was in oral tradition, and we didn't even have it written down. So there's a lot that gets lost. And again, you know, well, not again, in the Druidic tradition, it was anathema to write something down, to write a story down. So they were a storytelling tradition, bardic
Mhm.
tradition. So they believed it was important that the story lived and it grew through the ages. So there's that. I did add a little bit to this particular retelling of the wisdom of Rhiannon, and added the bit where she was a girl and growing into her own self. That I found it on a midwifery website, and it just clicked. It was, this is absolutely part of that story. It wasn't in the Mabinogi, but it definitely feels in sync with who Rhiannon is and the Rhiannon that comes through me, that talks to me. Absolutely. So I will
Yeah.
be doing more work in the future as well around the Rhiannon myth,
Mhm.
around the sister wounds,
Wow.
because there's a lot in
Now,
there.
the characters that you have, are you going to continue to keep the characters? Are they going to be different? How are
Nope,
you?
they're gonna be the same characters. They're gonna go through their wheel of the year and have experiences. And here's the fun thing is that I don't even know the story. This
Oh,
story is being written as I write it because
as
it's
you
like
do it.
emerging. Like when I realized how I needed to focus it,
Mhm.
within like a month, the little story came out. Boom. It wrote itself. It really did in many ways.
And
And
what
now
a
I'm figuring out how it fits, how it will continue to evolve. And
Mhm.
we highlighted a cis female, um, biological female, rite of passage ceremony. So rite of
Mhm.
passages are anything from one space transitioning to another space. And so, for instance, moving from being a child to being a young adult person, um, from being a single person to being a married person, from being a live person to being a dead person. All of those things are passages that we honor with rites around.
Right.
And so I am highlighting the female rite of passage ceremonies that happen with Mincy's first blood
Yeah,
moon
yeah,
comes.
I was really excited about it. Like I said, I was going to glance through it and kind of get some information, and then I started reading it. I was like, yeah, I'm going to read this. I love all the references that you put in there. I absolutely love that. I love, like I said, I love the definitions that you put in there. You put a lot of work into it. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
And I published it in three versions. So this one is a spiral bound.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's a
Okay.
smallish kind of book,
Hmm.
but it's one that you could potentially, if you bought it in spiral bound, take it apart and put it together in different ways later if you wanted, or just give your kid the one story with the glossary of the words, so you can have more um freedom around opening that book up and sharing different parts. Or
Right.
and also just the fact that I just love being able to hold a book flat,
Hmm.
especially if you're doing ritual. And at the back of this is a ritual.
There
And I
is.
give you words, I give you directions, I give you all kinds of insights that I've learned through the years of watching and doing this ceremony over and over again.
Yes, I noticed that. It's truly like it's a story, but it's also like a workbook too. And like you said with the spiral, that's brilliant with the spiral bound because you can take it apart and say, okay, let me hand you this first. Okay, let's discuss it, on and
Mhm.
on and on. And that way they're not cheating, flipping through,
Yeah,
and then you can give them the next section. You can
yeah.
have your reference section.
And
Yeah.
I really wanted to get it out right now so that people could have it for this Beltane if they want. I also know I'm going to be adding to this book. I've already got some things I'm going to be putting in. So there will be a revised edition coming out at some point, as with all of my things.
That's
And
yeah.
the Corellian Publishing is where you're going to be able to find this. You can find it on Amazon as well, but the Corellian Publishing, CorellianPublishing.com, I think it is. Anyway, you're going to be able to find it there. And I also founded a sanctuary for it's an association of nature-centered spiritual people and organizations called the Tree of Life Interfaith Sanctuary, which is also known as the TOLIS, TOLIS. And the Carillion Publishing has joined up with us in our association. And one of our vision areas is around elder wisdom and preservation of this elder wisdom. And that's one of the areas that the Carillion Publishing also is focusing on, is
Right.
helping elders to preserve their wisdom and make it accessible to people. So we're able to support ourselves, help ourselves by networking
Hmm.
more. And that's why the Tollus was created. And it's not about a tradition. It's about an ethics that we and believe in nature as the center of our spiritual way. And there are certain ethics that come along with that we have written up in a statement that we ask everybody to agree with us on so that we can come together and do good work and be more powerful together rather than separate, rather than breaking ourselves up and being competitive. Because I'm not about competitiveness necessarily. I'm about collaboration and lifting each other up and helping each other. Association
Coming
of
together.
people and groups. So the Corellians have joined as a group,
Right.
and we also honor people who are unto themselves, who are solitary, because
Perfect.
I've been a solitary priestess all my time. I have not really been allowed to join any particular coven or group. I could
Hmm.
join a church like the Unitarian Universalist Church. I was part of that very strongly and got a lot of leadership training for 10 years
Hmm.
in leadership positions with the UU Church in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And I have done all kinds of open ceremonies, hosted public events as myself, singular, as a solitary. And I wanted to have an association that also honored that tradition, which is definitely honored and able to be followed in our way.
Right. And how would someone get more information? The website, email?
Yes, um, it's tolasanctuary.org. So if you can remember the Tree of Life Interfaith Sanctuary, I know that's long, so that's why we decided TOLIS was great, little
Hmm.
acronym. But that was already taken, so we had to make it TOLI and then sanctuary.org.
Okay. And I'll put the links up on here.
Perfect.
So there are the website address and stuff like that.
So one of our vision areas, mission areas, is the preservation of elder wisdom. We
Hmm.
also support leaders, spiritual leaders in their work. We were working on getting our group exemption with the IRS. They stopped their process in 2020 and when they're rewriting and they still haven't published. So until that happens, we can't get that formally, but we're getting ready. We're ready to go once they give us the new procedures. And so at that point, we will be able to have people under our 501(c)(3), but we also have them just affiliated with us as friends, if you will. And so we have quarterly meetings, wisdom that we share with each other and support each other in these circles. And the other part is land sanctuaries. So this is one that's close to my heart, and why the Tollus even happened is because I had been carrying a vision that I've seen a whole bunch of other people in this way carry, which is wanting land that is held as sacred that people can go to and not be afraid to worship in, even nude if they want, if that's
Right.
what they need to do for their right, that they can be safe and unfettered in their worship. And I have 13 acres of land, you see it behind me, that I call Erosia. That's at the base of the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. And we are creating it as a land sanctuary. So land sanctuaries are land that I see people intentionally, mindfully creating as a place for people to come as a sanctuary to be with the land. My partner and I,
So
the way that we actually are able to support ourselves in this world is with our shop on Etsy. On
Mhm.
Etsy, it's called Rare Earth Woodworks, but we're Rare Earth Designs, is the actual name of the company. But on Etsy, you'll find us as Rare Earth Woodworks. And my partner and I create all kinds of sacred tools and gifts that are heirloom quality that are meant for, helping you with your esoteric type of spiritual path. So we have ceremonial magicians tools that are very esoteric, like Trithemius Table of Practices, multiple ones, special wands that are Trithemius wands. We have travel altars of different kinds, apothecaries. Our wood shop is here on the land, and it's actually written into what we want to do with our land sanctuary eventually is have it be, and it already is a place that people come and we can help them make their special tool, and we have all of the tools, all of the woodworking stuff, all of the things here that they might need, and that we could even take them on a kind of hermitage, working with their tool and getting it right and set them off to do that work.
So specifically, they can create their own with you. They can actually create.
Yeah, and we have campsites now. We're on Hip Camp at the moment. We have campsites, so if somebody were to want to come and make a spiritual tool, they could come and camp out here, and then we would figure out, an agreement around exchange of time and tools and also like what it's made of, the supplies, right? Because something made out of ebony is going to cost a little bit more than
Right.
something that's made out of like oak or walnut, so everything is a little different. So we would figure that out. And yes, so that is absolutely something that is possible. I also, through the Tollus, we can ordain people. We do have an ordination process as well. Part of that was because I got really frustrated with one, ordinations meaning nothing, potentially, because it's just $5 to get a piece of paper online. And two, um, where to get one. That if you wanted one, if you needed one for, like, mostly it's just prison ministry that you really have to have one. But for doing weddings, a lot of times people like to know that you're ordained and have some sort of experience. So we do have a process that we have created for the Tullus to honor different paths. And so basically you come to us and tell us what you've done, and we talk about it and decide together if you're ready to step into your ministry and what that is.
You walk them through it. Then, is this something you can do online, or is it something that you have to do in person?
Hmm. No, you could probably do this online. I do a lot of stuff online. In fact, when with our quarterly meetings, they're online. So we do our wisdom circles. We have a leaders summit that we have been doing every year, and it's a little bit more intense where we have some leaders trainings and so forth and so on. Now, in our wisdom circle, it's 4 rounds. So first is connection, second is some sort of teaching and discussion and going deeper about that teaching. Third is open share, whatever people are bringing out, feelings, jokes, stories, songs, whatever. And then the fourth is gratitude and looking forward in that networking piece of what are you doing? So we need to share with one another. And maybe you can help me know how to do this, or I find out, oh, you dealt with that problem. I need to make a phone call with you, later so we can talk about how that went. Maybe you could give me some pointers because I'm dealing with a similar situation.
That's
the
fantastic.
intention is to really create a network of people that feel safe with one another, to call
Mhm,
upon one another when we're in crisis. Constantly reminding people, listen inside, listen inside. What is one of the biggest sayings that goes across the groups is know thyself.
mhm. And there's so much time on, you get on something like that on the internet, and then next thing you know, it's like 2 hours later, and you're going, oh my God, I could have been doing this, that, or the other. I don't even watch television right now. I do listen to podcasts while I'm cleaning and things like that. But if I get on television, it's for a particular thing, because I will binge watch. So I stay away from that as much as possible. I've got too many things. I'm living my purpose, and it sounds like you're living your purpose too. I love to hear that when I see people that are excited and they're able to do all the things they want to do and live, because how many people can say they can do that,
Well,
you know?
that's true. And this is not easy. So mind you, I mean, we need to raise some money out here so that we can actually build the shops, so that we can build out the areas. We've been
Hmm.
working on a 45-foot labyrinth. We also have a blessing tree that is a huge maple with her arms up, and literally there is a
Oh,
figure of a woman in the drawing down the moon pose that is a
wow.
tree out here on this land that is maple, and her name is Ambrosia,
Oh,
and she's putting out blossoms right now.
oh, that's so beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, if somebody came up to you and said, somebody completely new and said, what is Beltane? What would you tell them?
It is a holiday that falls in between the spring equinox and the summer solstice,
Mhm.
and is a rite of the passage of spring into summer, and is about sexuality, pleasure, joy, and creating prosperity and abundance upon the land. Usually,
That's
it
beautiful.
involves dancing of a maypole.
Hmm. And it's funny that people do that without realizing what it means, you know. Um, I mean, I've heard of dancing on Maple since I was little, and I didn't find out what it actually meant until many years later. There's a lot of little traditions like that like even jumping over the fire. You know, many people do this type of activities and stuff to celebrate, but they don't understand what they're doing it for.
Well, it's co-opted. It's people loved their tradition so much when a new religion came in, they weren't really willing to let it go. So it became incorporated into the new religion, which is called syncretism. And so it was syncretized with the new one, the old one. So we have certain beliefs and traditions that continue into the new one as a way of the new one kind of in, getting the people to come along.
Hmm. And I wonder how they decide what they pick and choose. I always want to ask people that. I'm like, how do you decide? Because there's so many different religions that celebrate, like some don't celebrate Halloween and but some of them do. And I'm like, how do you pick and choose which
The
one?
land and the tradition and the people that are there. That's how it happens. People or somebody gets a vision and they make a change, and they put their energy forward and they make it happen. So that's how all culture evolves.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love it that you have. I wish at an earlier age I went diving into all those different things. I'm so interested in it now. And like I said, I'm super interested in all the different aspects of different belief systems and different ideas. And so so I kind of dive in. I go into a rabbit hole pretty quick.
Mhm.
And I dive into all the different thought processes and belief systems and stuff like that. Find it really interesting. And
So
I don't.
that's why the Tolis is
Mhm.
nature centered rather than a tradition centered, because we can have nature centered Christians, and we do. We have nature centered Christians. We can have nature centered Islamic or Buddhist or Hindu or whatever.
All of
Like,
it.
uh, what do we have in common? The earth
Hmm.
and its place in the universe.
Absolutely.
And that's why I don't tend, I've, in the 90s, we had a whole bunch of conversations around what shall we call ourselves? Shall we be pagan?
Hmm.
Shall we be this? Shall we be that? And I glommed onto what I coined as nature-centric or nature-centered, and I use that much more often than earth-centered
Hmm.
because I tend to believe it's much more descriptive of what we actually do. Because I
Right.
don't know any pagan that stops with the ends of the earth. I just don't. Usually there's a moon, usually there's a sun, usually there's a universe that all things come from.
Hmm.
Just saying.
Just saying. I know I have a hard time with labels. Even when somebody asks me, "Are you a witch?" Of course, I say yes, but I like to always say, "Well, what's your definition of a witch first?"
Good
Because
point.
everybody's different with that definition. Do you practice magic? Well, what's your definition of magic? Because
Yep.
to me,
So
like
we've
I
got
was,
Beltane Blessings, this little book of targeting preteens and an experience of Beltane. And just a reminder, we all have that inside of ourselves. So this is also a book for everyone. Check it out, especially you know, if you find Beltane to be scary, you are not alone. That is normal in this society. Seriously.
yeah.
I myself have been afraid to go to Beltane
It's
after
funny.
years
That's
and
one thing
years.
I've never been afraid. I wasn't afraid to go. I was just, I was interested. I was like, let's go see. And everybody's Beltane is different too. I
True.
actually go to two Beltanes this year. I'm so
Hmm.
excited. They just happen to fall in two different weekends. So,
Yeah.
and I believe they're going to be two totally different experiences.
And they
So
will, and that's so perfect for you to say and bring that out because yes, every Beltane is different and some absolutely might not invoke any kind of fear at all because they're not potentially going really deep into that sexier component. That's usually where the fear gets hooked. If
right.
there's some sort of sexiness, like, oh, they're going to be nude, they're going to be showing their boobs. Oh my God, like, what am I going to do around that? And are they going to need me to be that? Or, those kinds of things when people aren't sure what the expectation is. Remember at the beginning, we talked about being clear on expectations too,
Hmm. Yep,
and
that's very
not
important.
assuming. So it's
Don't
always
assume.
good to ask questions and to read up on different things and find out what to, you know,
What to
learn more, educate more. You will be feeling much safer and in harmony with yourself if you have a better understanding of what's going on in the world around you, including any particular ceremony that you go to. So, if
right.
nothing else, this little book is a wonderful thing to put in your library to pull
Mhm.
out if you're doing a ceremony and want to see how somebody else does it.
Right. And your future books, I'm gonna guess that they're
Mhm.
probably gonna have all the references and things like
They
that
will
in it.
be a very similar format where we
Okay.
have a more modern little tale that the young people can more easily relate to, and
Hmm.
then a tale from a timeless tale, if you will, from our vast history. And I'm focusing on the blood history from me, Celtic. So since my ancestry came from Northern Europe and the Celtic people, generally, that's where I draw a lot of sources from. And for this particular book series, that's where most of my sources is coming from, Celtic traditions.
But it's for
However,
everybody. It is for all
it
the
is for
traditions. It
everybody.
is. It's 100% for
Hmm.
everybody. It's very educational. And you also mentioned that you will probably be adding to it. Would
Absolutely.
that be with all the different Sabbats throughout the year that you're going to be
I'm
collecting
sure
throughout the
because
years?
it just it happens as as I walk through them, I get more teachings and then I want to share
Right.
those teachings, right?
I
Or
love
think
that.
of something else. And so I see these, I mean, first I've got to get out the first books.
Right, right. Got to get them out, and we're doing that.
And I'm working on that, and that's going to happen in the next couple of years, and then
Hmm.
we will move into the next project. And at the same time I'm spinning other projects too. So very
Oh,
busy person.
do you want to share any of the other projects you have coming up, or is this a surprise?
Well, with the Corellians, we have a project that we're going to do together with the Tree of Life Interfaith Sanctuary, and I will just put a little teaser here. It's
Okay.
called a Ritual Recipe Box.
Ooh.
And
Okay.
we're going to have different elders do different recipes for their recipe box. But that
That's
people could
beautiful.
collect these and put them together and make their own recipe box. So if they're doing a ceremony, they can go through and add elements from this, elements from that, element from that, pass them out among the people that are there and have their little ceremony.
Oh, I'm
They can
excited
add
about that.
their own little recipes in their box.
I'm excited about that. Well, yay. Okay. Well, as final words, what would you like to say to everybody?
Merry meet and blessed be.
Beautiful. Well, great blessings to you, and we'll talk to you soon. I'm going to have you back on for your other books as well, and we'll
Yay.
just start getting them out. I'm super happy to have you on right now, and I'm very excited about this episode and the fact that we're going to be able to get it out for Beltane. So thank
Wonderful,
you so much.
wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you. It was a
Thank
pleasure talking to you anytime,
thank
anytime.
blessed be.
Blessed be.